Stamogwinis. Hello, everybody. My Indian name is Huele, which means meadowlark, and my English name is Nikki Petrie. I come to you from the Tshitsi people, those who were discovered here. Our traditional land spans from eastern Washington into western Montana and parts of Canada. Today, we're called Coeur d'Alene, and I greet you all with a happy heart and a warm handshake. And happy Native American Heritage Month. We have a phenomenal conversation ahead tonight, and thank you for celebrating with us. I run a program here at the Aspen Institute called the Center for Native American Youth. We work alongside Native youth 24 and under from across the nation on leadership and empowerment, narrative change, civic engagement, and more. All of our work is designed by Native youth and for Native youth. Our programming is rooted in culture, and we measure success through Indigenous frameworks. I'm proud of the positive change we're making for our future generations, and it's a privilege to work with the Institute with programs such as Religion and Society. We hosted a forum a while back where Native youth on a panel asked everyone to pull out their phones, and she told them to open their browser and Google Native American. And when the audience did that, they saw images of lithographs, historical black and white images of chiefs, caricatures, and more of those kinds of images showed up. We never saw people of today. And I'm so proud that today there's an increase in visibility, people who look like us and like my daughter in so many spaces. We're leading top colleges and universities, conducting research on our people that creates change. We're writing films and producing media. We're running nonprofits at the Aspen Institute. And we're going to the polls in record numbers, electing people who look like us, think like us, and we are seeing ourselves in movies, sports, education, and more. And we know that our contributions as Native people are invaluable. And when we're given space to build a system that reflects our success, it benefits all of us. So this Native American Heritage Month, can we all collectively make a commitment? Let's go beyond performative land acknowledgements before meetings. Let's do our own education on terminology and what folks want to be called. Let's advocate on behalf of Native communities and understand how cultural competency is an asset in all spaces. And let's stop asking, how can I help? And just dive in and do the work to dismantle systems that were designed to eradicate Native people. Because let's face it, it didn't work anyway. Thanks again for spending a bit of your night with us. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague now, Audrey. Lim Lynch Injas Beus Achest, a heartfelt thank you.
Greetings, everyone. I am equally excited to be with you this evening. I am the Reverend Dr. Audrey Price, and I serve as the Associate Director for Management and Development in the Religion and Society program here at the Aspen Institute. Our program works to strengthen the understanding of religion's role in advancing equity and the common good by shifting ideas and policies and practices. We do this to create the environment in which religious pluralism can thrive, where diverse religious communities and the non-religious can fully embrace America's ideas by engaging and thriving with mutual trust and respect. It warms my heart to be here this evening and to introduce to you Caitlin Curtis. Caitlin Curtis is an award-winning author, poet, storyteller, and public speaker. As an enrolled citizen of the Potawatomi Nation, Caitlin writes on the intersection of spirituality and identity and how that shifts throughout our lives. We are lucky to get to know Caitlin through her work as a member of our Racial Justice and Religion Collective. Caitlin shares her work, including a podcast of reflections and poetry through her Substack, The Liminality of Journal, which you can sign up for, and has a new book, y'all, Living Resistance, coming out next March that you can pre-order. You are in for a treat this evening. Caitlin?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so honored to share this space with all of you. I'm so honored that you showed up to this conversation. You know, I wanted to do this because we don't have spaces like this. And for Native Heritage Month, we are often invited into a a lot of white spaces, honestly, to have conversations, to answer questions that can often be really triggering and exhausting. And so my publisher was like, what if you had a conversation? What if you got to control the space? And I thought that was such a beautiful thing to ask of me, because I hadn't really considered it. And I'm just so grateful to the three people who are joining me. So I want to introduce them, and then we'll chat a little more and we'll hop into some questions and conversation. So first, Dr. Amanda Taccini is Navajo from Ganado, Arizona. She is an assistant professor in educational leadership and innovation at Arizona State University. Amanda's research explores the relationship between systemic and structural histories of settler colonialism and the ongoing erasure of Indigenous presence and belonging in college settings using qualitative Indigenous methodologies. She is the author of this beautiful book, Native Presence and Sovereignty in College, and the co-editor of Weaving and Otherwise in Relations Methodological Practice. So that's Amanda joining us tonight. Next, we have Sierra Teller-Onellis, who is previously staffed on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Superstar, Happy Endings, Superstore, Happy Endings, Splitting Up Together, Surviving Jack, and Selfie. She is the co-creator and showrunner of the Peacock show Rutherford Falls, starring Ed Helms, Jana Schmieding, and Michael Greyeyes. Sierra's work has been featured on This American Life, the New York Times opinion section, and the Hollywood Reporter's guest column. A graduate of the University of Arizona, she previously worked as a film programmer for the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian, helping to create ridiculously entertaining programs about Native film and media. Raised in Tucson, Arizona, she is also an award-winning 6th-generation Navajo tapestry weaver, a fairly good mom, and currently resides in Los Angeles, California. And last but not least, we have Dr. Twyla Baker, an enrolled citizen of the 3 affiliated tribes, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation of North Dakota. She lives and works on her ancestral homelands on the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation in Northwest North Dakota. She is the president of the Nweta Hidatsa Sanish College. Viewing life through an Indigenous lens, her worldview informs everything she does professionally and personally, and she is raising her children to know, see, and carry on their tribal life ways as they were taught to her by her parents. So I just want to thank each of you for being here. And I just want to say, I was so honored that all 3 of you said yes to this hour together. I want you all to know that you inspire me. You make me laugh. You make me cry sometimes. You remind me of why we do this work, and all of our work is so different in the world, and we're showing up to it. And it's just such a gift to know that I can at least show up to the internet and know that you're there and that you're doing the real stuff in the real spaces, but that we also get to share a virtual world together. And so I'm just so grateful to each of you. And what I would love to do, and just opening up of that celebration of our gifts and our presence. This is what tonight is about, is just celebrating and us getting to name the things that are important to us, for ourselves, for our communities, for future generations. So I would love for you to just tell us a little about you. Tell us what you're passionate about, what you care about in the world, and what gifts that you're giving into whatever spaces you inhabit. I would just love to hear from each of you. So Sierra, do you want to start?
Oh, damn. Sure. Before I start, Yat Sierra Nalasian Shet, Tabahendish Nikait Nepashi, Twahagunidisha Do, Nikait Edishanelli. My name is Sierra Teller-Onellis. I am a member of the Navajo Nation. I am Edgewater clan, born from the Mexican clan. I think I'm related to Amanda. I read her bio. I was the showrunner of Rutherford Falls, which was the first Native American sitcom in the United States. And I'm currently developing. I have an overall deal at Universal and am writing. I'm a mom. And yeah, I mean, I think the question is like, what's important to me? I think this is such a cool thing to do, because I don't know how many Native or non-Native people are in the audience, but Native American Heritage Month is the most exhausting month of my life. And because I have a higher profile now than I would say I did 2 years ago, because you get the randomest requests, like from people in random countries or random places being like, we have a talk in 40 minutes. Can you join us? And I'm like, no. And then you just like crawl to the dang finish line. So when I got the call from Kaylin, I was like, oh my God, this I will say yes to, because I've actually started saying no to certain things. And then and was also just like so excited to be in this conversation with these amazing Indigenous women. I think what I really am trying to covet these days is family. I think that happens during the fall because it's holiday time and it's family time, especially just like in television, a lot of television schedules as well. And then really like my home, making my home a really healthy, happy place for my son. Gianna Schmieding, who plays Regan on our show, is like a guiding light in my life. And she talks a lot about Native people living in abundance and like living love fully, living laughter fully. I think we had a lot of ancestors and elders who had a lot of really hard times. And there was a real sort of premium put on pain and that experience. And I think one of the ways we got through it is through laughter and through humor, but I don't think we like cherished it or championed it as much as I think we're really trying to do now, and sort of living fully both of those experiences at the same time, and really just finding like deeper connections with my parents, deeper connections with my brother. I think that, you know, obviously COVID affected so many Indigenous families, and I'm very much my family. We lost family members, and my brother was on a ventilator for many months. And so he's okay now, and he's a year, I mean, he's not okay, but he's a year out. But I just think like it is unfortunate when like tragedies bring people closer together. But I do think like fundamentally there's been a deeper sort of like reaching out and kind of really trying to connect in a really beautiful way in the past couple of years. And so that has been my experience. And those are the things I really kind of covet and enjoy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amanda, do you want to share?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yad eshe ya mena tachini inisha, nanish as a tachini in the shlong, as a son of Bashichin, Skobha dashe adon shia dashanale, look antianasha, kuteko air zanishle. I just want to say how grateful I am to be here. I mean, I really have to like feel it. I mean, Sierra, I'm a big fan for you. My kids are like going bananas because I get to talk alongside you. We love Rutherford Falls. I remember the first time one of the girls was wearing Bethany's t-shirt. My youngest daughter, who's 8, was like, "Mom, that's your shirt." I mean, just little things like that of finding significance is just so beautiful. And I know your mom has taught me how to weave. Barbara's been a wonderful weaving mentor here in Phoenix. And so shout out and love to your mom if she's on. But I also want to just say it's good to be with you, Dr. Baker. I'm just a fan too. I've heard such wonderful things from you from other people in education. And I just see your stuff on Twitter, and you're just always dropping bombs and just really sharing honesty about our people. And I don't know how you do it, and being a tribal president and being all the things. And it's just a joy to be alongside you. And Caitlin, you are near and dear to my heart. When I read your book, I sent you a private message because it touched my heart so much. And I just value the time that you had in cultivating the conversations around spirituality and faith, and then bringing us together here to dream up something that you feel is needed. So I feel like for me, I'm originally from Ganado, Arizona. I'm Navajo also, and I'm faculty at Arizona State University, where I study higher education. I'm in the field of higher education. And so if I have any higher ed friends out there, that's good to see you. But for me, I think right now, like, because one of the questions is like, what do I do? Ultimately, I'm always thinking about my babies. I mean, my oldest is 20 now. I still consider her my baby. And then I have a 16-year-old and I have an 8-year-old, and all of my nieces and nephews, I have many of them. Some are grown adults. I always feel like I'm doing work for them. I've always been that way. And so I think for me, it's really, so this conversation is so important because it's organized by the Center for Native American Youth. Shout out to the Aspen Institute, shout out, because there really are our futures. And I just really feel like they are in the center of my heart and what I do this work. And so they're also the ones that keep me getting up every morning to get me doing the work I'm doing is because of them. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Twyla.
Hey, so Shamanakpago, Madashimiya Maarawish. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh my goodness, it's part of the reason why I hopped on here was because of you, Caitlin, because of oh my goodness, we've been like virtual friends for quite some time now, and it's strange. It's so crazy because of how small and I even the larger Native community almost feels like it's tight knit. And I mean, you guys talked about it just now. So I was here, and Amanda, you are probably related to each other. You know, this stuff happens. This is just really kind of commonplace. We try to find a connection by the ways that we are family to each other, the ways that we are clan to each other, and all of those types of things. Well, first of all, I'm speaking to you from my reservation. I am a citizen of the Mandan Hidatsa and Rikra Nation in Northwest North Dakota. I'm also the president of Nuita Hidatsa Sathnish College, located here on the Fort Berthold Indian Res. And I was born and raised here, left here for a number of years, and then came back. And honestly, the things that make me, I suppose, it's kind of like reflected in what has already been said. Primarily are my children and you know, my family, my extended family there too. Just speaking about how the way we reckon kin, the way we understand family to be is a much different perspective than Western mindsets would think. It's much further and, you know, far-reaching than the nuclear family. And to me, that was on purpose, and that's been in existence for thousands of years because it's basically proven to work, so to speak, where we don't leave anybody behind. And I literally get to this work that I do with the tribal colleges and universities is so soul feeding, because, you know, of course, we do the practical stuff. We help people to get training so they can get jobs and provide and put food on the table. But we also have the responsibility of maintaining our cultural knowledge and our life ways. It's so much so that it's in our mission statements, and therefore I get to do things like, you know, run our equine program here, or, you know, I think this evening they're learning how to make fry bread across the street at the cultural center, I believe. So I'll probably be going over there after this. But it's just, you know, my job is
Give us some
amazing.
fry bread.
Heck yeah, you know. But it's like, and I get to call that curriculum, you know, I get to get paid for that. So it's just, it's amazing. And everything, all parts of that kind of feed me. It's you know, there's also the flip side of that. It's tough to be an Indigenous person, period. And kind of what Sierra was talking about, because I'm a researcher by training, the numbers that we see, the reports that we hear in the news about Indian country, about the things that impact us, those aren't just numbers to us, to those of us who live here and who reside here and who, you know, who love and make our lives here. Every single number is a person, you know, and is a story, and all those types of things, you know. So, you know, it's a, should you choose it, it's a big responsibility to be Indigenous. I mean, and honestly, I think what keeps me getting up in the morning is wanting to craft a path where Indigenous young people, Indigenous elders, whomever, really get to define what that is themselves, because it's different wherever you look. You know, it appears so many myriad different ways. So I think that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. I love the just the cohesiveness in all of your responses of those things that hold us to community, to future generations, current generations, you know, and Sierra hitting on just this month, I put in my notes, November is exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. And I was so excited that this actually landed on like day 1 of November, because we get to just be here now before the shit happens. And so we can just like hold this for an hour, you know, and the audience can hold it with us. But also I want to be in this space and tell the truth of it. Like, having months dedicated to people groups is great in theory, but there's a lot that ends up happening that's super problematic. And so you have performative posts and performative things. You have people sliding into our messages and DMs asking for labor, you know, or just expecting it on our feeds. And, or instead of like celebrating, you're just rehashing trauma for us and somehow with us over and over again and calling it a celebration of heritage and culture. And so there's just a lot of things, and I totally get it. And that's why I was so excited to have this space. And why we have chosen November as the month to have Thanksgiving and Native Heritage Month, I do not know, but that is what we've landed with. And so I would just love to know from each of you, like, what boundaries do you set in November? Like, I say no to a lot of stuff, like you're saying, Sierra, like starting to say no to things, choosing certain things. Like, I have to set boundaries because a few years ago I wasn't. And as an author, I wasn't realizing like how much was getting built up in my body from all of these kinds of events that were so triggering. And so I started realizing like, I've got to say no, and I have to do things that I enjoy during this month. I have to spend time with my family, asking what it means to be me, like to be an Anishinaabe Kwe, and to celebrate this month for us, you know, and that's really hard. It's hard to do that in our culture. So how do you personally celebrate this month? Is there anything special you do for yourself, for your family? And, you know, what boundaries do you set? How do you hold that space? Amanda, do you want to share?
Yeah, you know, I feel like I'm trying to get better. I think definitely when I was working in the university setting, working with Native college students, I definitely felt the pressure of constantly programming the whole month. And at the time I didn't realize how much I was putting that labor on myself and students. I mean, you feel it from the pressure of the university. That's your month to educate the larger campus. I mean, it's just, the irony is real. I mean, there's one hand, you want to make some visibility and representation for your community because we're so small in these spaces. But the other 10, it's just like, how much is that reifying and visibility by constantly like feeling that we have to educate the larger community on issues and holding that responsibility on top of students trying to get a college degree. I mean, that's a lot to ask if you think about it. And so, and I like you, Sierra, you get the weirdest things. I mean, I remember one time I got an email from someone in Germany who really wanted a video, wanted me to be a part of a video, and was going to come out and do a whole thing, and like wanted me to have a powwow, like really like using language of like generalized language of Native representations. Like, can you get a powwow together so we can film, and you know, all of this. And so there's just the extremeness of this month. And so I've learned to, and I'm still not what I'm still learning is just about what healthy boundaries for me is. One, like what Sierra and both Twyla mentioned, is family. We've always gathered for food. I mean, I don't think we called it Thanksgiving. Maybe we did. I just remember I grew up on the reservation at Ganado, and we always had food, and it included not only turkey, but mutton stew and like food from our homes. Yeah. And it was a time for all of our family to gather and be together and laugh and share stories. So it was always a part of my thinking about gathering together for food. I mean, it's my husband's favorite time of the year because of the food. And so we still do that. We still gather for food. I mean, we don't talk about Thanksgiving. I mean, it hasn't ever really been a part of our language and our families. So it's a time for us to gather food. But recently with my kids now in urban schooling, it's been like, I've had really harmful things happen to my kids where they come home about what they're learning in school around these times. And so it's different from me growing up on the res, where I don't feel like I had that experience on res schools as much as my kids in these white schools. So there is that type of relearning I have to tell my kids, then I have to do the talk to the school thing as well on top of the educating that. So in terms of boundaries, what I've learned to do is preempt teachers now. Every year I write them a letter and I tell them like, all right, be cautious during this time. I don't want to like burden my kid, and I recommend readings. I'm an educator. I recommend them my friend's book, Leilani Sibzalian, who wrote about Indigenous survivance schooling. So I do that kind of stuff this time to kind of prep for the harm that has happened with my kids. I guess that would be an example of a boundary that I'm doing, is just kind of the pre-work for this time period now. What do y'all do, Sierra or Twyla? What's your, I need to learn more too, that's why.
I'm in therapy, normalized brown women in therapy, and she had some really good advice for me because I was saying yes to everything, and it was almost like a cup that was kind of getting filled up, and then once it was filled, everything else just fell off. So I'd have to say no to whatever, but there'd be really cool things I wanted to do, and then I said yes to this random thing. And so she talked about like, it's the verbiage is kind of gross, but like corporations have like bylaws. So like, you know, like Costco will have a sort of like list of bylaws of like, this is what our company is about, this is what we support, this is what we won't do. And there are certain, and so she was like, write bylaws like for your participation. And so it's like, if it fits these like 5 rules, you can say yes to it. And so it's like, if it directly helps Indigenous people, if it's challenging to you, or like strengthens your growth edges, if it benefits your family. I will say if the money is really good, just in terms of like taking that into account, or if what was the 5th one? I can't remember or if it like, you know, raises the profile of something you're making in a way that doesn't feel gross. You know, obviously there's like a no gross category for all of them, but it's helpful to have that and kind of go through those questions. So if it doesn't meet those boundaries for you, then you can just say no and just say, this doesn't fit sort of under my purview. And that has been really helpful. I agree that like, I think like, I'm from the suburbs, so I'm from Tucson, Arizona, but we would always go back for the fair time. And it was like, there's like a time of harvest. And so like, even if we didn't necessarily live on our reservation, like my aunt like hunts for corn every year. So she'll find someone who has corn. She will like force my uncle to build a mud oven, and then they'll make kneel down bread. And so like, it's like the hunt for kneel down bread is like most of my November. And that's like my favorite thing. And like, when my now husband, who's white, came to visit my grandma, because we would stay with her for like a couple weeks at a time. I was very close with her. And he found kneel down bread, this guy selling it on the side of the road, and he bought her some, and she freaked out. She was so happy. And he won her heart. So like kneel down bread is like, it's sort of like a corn cake that's cooked in a corn husk in a mud oven. And it's so good. You eat it with butter. And so now it's weird because now my aunt will make it with my uncle. And if we're not there to help, she will like freeze dry it. She does this thing where she'll like vacuum seal it with dry ice and then get it to my house. And so it's weirdly like future kneel down bread, but we've like found a way to kind of like build those connections and make those connections despite, you know, not all being in the same place. So yeah, I definitely think food is like a big thing. And we always, you know, it's so funny because I feel like we talk a lot about this on the show of how like Indigenous people are not a monolith. And so like for Thanksgiving or whatever you want to call it, you know, we have family around my dinner table. There's people who like love Thanksgiving and love football and like want to do the whole thing. There's people who are like ban the government and like none of this should exist. And then we have people who are like, well, we've always celebrated the harvest and this is just something we've always done. You can call it what you want, but like we've been doing this. And so that's sort of my like kind of realm that I hit is I love when like the weather changes and things kind of start to slow down and things get really like dark in the mornings and it gets as cold as it's going to get in California where I live right now. And then we had like our first snow in Newcomb at least. And so now it's like we can start telling winter stories. There's like all these things you can do once the weather changes. And so especially now that I have a kid, I'm like wanting to embrace some of that stuff that I think my family didn't totally do because we weren't raised super traditional. But like wanting to embrace some of those kind of rhythms and that sort of thing. But that's really, to me, the boundaries of it is like the slowing down of the season before things start ramping up with the holidays and stuff. Like I kind of love November for that kind of middle period of like, it's okay to eat the stuffing and it's okay to kind of slow down. And it does make you kind of want to reach out and connect with family.
Yeah. Thank you.
So in terms of boundaries, this is something that I've kind of struggled with for lots and lots of years. I'm a single mom of lots of children. And so I have to be pretty darn careful in terms of my energies and stuff. And then Caitlin, you know that this past year has been pretty tumultuous for me and my family. So I have to be very careful in curating my energy levels. And I think where I put my focus most recently, even in the past year, is on reciprocal relationships, and whether that's individual or organizational, or wherever that may be. I look to relationships that feed me, and not necessarily in a transactional way. It's those ones that where I see the investment of my energy is going to have the most impact, and it's going to be something that feeds other people as well. And so, I draw my energy from there too, which is why I was like resounding yes, almost within like a few minutes of Caitlin asking me to be on this panel. I was like, yeah, heck yes, this is medicine. This is something Creator is showing up for me, and and handing over to me as a medicine, because he knows what's going on with Twyla and our family. And so those are kind of the boundaries I set, so to speak. And I've been pretty choosy in terms of this particular month, because usually I'd be like bookings, because I have to, as a single mom, I got to make that paper, and and that, even that is something that I've had to kind of learn about. We have this cultural mores of, if somebody asks it of you, then you have to do it. But then, I've had to add in that practicality of, okay, well, I have to do it, but you're going to pay me, along those lines, and be honest about it, because kids got to eat, lights got to stay on, heat's got to stay on, all of those types of things. But in terms of like guarding my psyche, guarding my own spirit, and reinvesting into myself, this past year has been quite the lesson in understanding that, as Indigenous women, we take care of the people. They always talk about women are the backbone of the people, women are the backbone of the people. And then we forget that we ourselves are also the people.
Yes.
We deserve as much care
Yes.
as what we talk about. We as individuals, aren't I one of the people? So pour back into yourself, so you don't have to feel bad about doing that type of thing. And I think about like my family members and how they would want to pour back into me, the level of care and love that they have for me. I'm getting emotional talking about it right now, but it's okay to have boundaries, for one thing. And particularly in this month, I'm not sure the entire history of Native American Heritage Month, or how it came to be that it suddenly became all this intense additional labor for Indigenous people. It's like, I am glad that this is on the 1st, because it's like, I feel like my energy level is way up here on the 1st, and I have to kind of conserve it until the end of the month or something. My blood quantum is 150 right now. So, it's like, and I'll chip away at it throughout the month. So I'll just kind of, I'll do the best that I can until I feel bad for those who are scheduled on the 28th to listen to me speak about anything, but we'll do the best that we can. And I think having boundaries, period, and recognizing that that's a valuable thing, and it's an important thing for Indigenous people to hold on to, is so crucial. Not to get us not just through this month. Yeah, it
It's a new
is.
thing for Native people. I haven't heard Native people talk about boundaries until like 3 months ago. Like, it's
For
like a
real.
new thing.
For real.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. But
No, not at all. It's like, well, we get drilled into our heads that you're supposed to give when the people ask, but then you got to remember that those other people don't necessarily have those teachings,
Mhm.
And takers will take, so I'll go into a whole other diatribe about colonialism if I go too much further. So
I think that's what's so dicey about Native American Heritage Month, is there is an expectation of a certain demographic to be entertained in a way
Yes.
that I don't, and I'm sure it's the same for other demographics in their heritage months, but there's like, we used to do films at the National Museum of the American Indian, and we were like, okay, this is our opportunity to show something really like hard-hitting or interesting or dynamic, specifically because the audience was going to show up and the audience was going to be there. but a lot of people I think came because they're like, ooh, this is going to be fun. And so it's like kind of sometimes meeting those programs with a little bit more of an edge, because you know you're going to get butts and seats in a way that you might not on another month, and like not wasting that opportunity, but really being like, okay, I'm going to show you about Jock Soto and Navajo ballet dancer. You know what I mean? It's not just going to be like little kids hoop dancing, which we all love and is fish in a barrel. But I'm just saying, like, I think they come with the expectation of like, you know, ribbons and feathers and to be entertained in this way.
Yeah.
And I think it's like you really got to kind of draw those lines in the sand, because they're showing up with that expectation, and like that can be really hard to just wear on you for a whole month.
Yeah.
Even if you want to program and you want to educate and you want to do that stuff, it can just like start to get to you.
There's a movie out, and this is just the strangest, bear with me, this is the strangest tangent ever, but there's a movie out right now called Marcel the Shell with Shoes on. And okay, there's a message in there, follow me. But the creator of that show, I can't remember, Jenny Slate, that's her name. She was talking about how Marcel the Shell goes viral, you know, and he's talking, and it's so cute. I just so encourage you guys to watch it. But he talks about how there's a difference between an audience and a community. And the way we view the things that are important to us, like the movie that you're talking about or the show that you're talking about, we view that with the eyes of a community. We don't view it with the eyes of an audience where we can be detached and then, oh, well, that's nice. And then we can move on to the next thing. You're viewing it as a community with a heart that is connected to what we're viewing, if that makes sense.
100%. Yeah. I think there's some people who go in thinking this is for me, and we kind of go in thinking this is for us. And like,
yes,
that is what allows you to get drained. Sometimes that is what allows you to like want to do the extra thing, and not everyone absorbing those programs has that same mindset. I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think that speaks for all artistry, whatever you're creating, is I'm finding that like even in writing, like I realize how much I've been trained to write for a white audience. I mean, like we are trained to write for that, because what do? We over-explain things that we know naturally to each other as natives. Like there's things that I'm realizing when I'm talking to a larger non-native audience, I'm explaining more things. I'm like, that I don't have to explain if I'm with you all. And there's a labor of that. There's an exhaustion in that explaining process. So, but then I also recognize that some natives, their energy level increases by doing that. And I just have to know that. And because that speaks to the multitude and the diversity of our people. Sure. But for me, I have to know what drains my energy quickly and what fuels me. And that's a part of the boundary, is the barometer setting. Like there's a barometer aspect of setting the boundary of knowing what drains me and what also fuels me, and really quickly. So I feel like the pandemic honestly has taught me that, because like it was a time for us to just kind of like be in our homes doing a lot, but also realizing what's important in my barometer, what's important in my energy, and what is draining me. And how now that as we're, you know, opening into this new, I don't know, world phase of the pandemic, it's trying to stay connected to that, what was fueling. Yes. And I think that's a part of the own personal boundaries and barometer setting that I'm working through. But it's hard because it changes and it shifts with what we're creating, what we're doing, who we are around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it speaks to that very fine line that we always have to walk as Indigenous women, of like, we should do this. I feel like I should do this. And then we also need money. We need money to live. We need money to support our kids and our families and our communities. And we're going to take your money if we need it. And so like, I'm not afraid to do that, but also we have to say no at some point too, because we have to hold that for ourselves, hold that space. And that is so incredibly hard. And it's hard to do it with social media. Like, how much do we give? How much do we educate? How much do we post, you know? And one of you, I mean, it's just, they're just feeding off of it. There is not this reciprocity. I think you said that, Sierra. Well, oh man. Okay. We're going to run out of, like, I'm not even going to get to all the questions. Okay. Let's move to this one. So the Center for Native American Youth, I'm so excited that they got to be a part of this and just like pulling all of this together. You know, I always think about how like we exist in this moment right now in time between our ancestors and because of our ancestors, and that we're always like these ancestors in the making, you know, like we live in that liminal space between these kind of worlds. And And the other day we were meeting to talk about this event, and Cheyenne was sharing from the Center for Native Youth, was sharing about, you know, the importance of connecting with our child selves. And I write about this a lot, and I share it with a lot of audiences when I do workshops about the importance of this, but I forget to practice it for me. You know, like, what does it do for our children and for future generations when we start healing, like going to therapy, when we start healing our relationship to ourselves, when we start loving that child? And so that's a question I'd love to hear anything about your journey in that. And then also just, what do we hope to pass on to future generations? Like, what's happening in the world right now? What do we want them to know? And how can we engage with our child selves in that process?
That is very hard to do, I will say on that. Like, I think I
Yeah.
didn't really realize how to talk to a kid until I had one, and the necessity of loving that inner child. Like, I remember I was in therapy and my therapist was like, there's a you that exists that is worthy of love, no matter what your job is or what your performance is. And I was like, what do you mean? And then she was like, no matter what, like, you're worthy of love. And I'm like, because I'm such a good person. And she's like, no, like, even if you were a murderer, there's like a core to you that's like worthy of love. And I'm like, can you start over? Just start from the beginning. Like, it just did not like penetrate my brain for like the whole session. And I do think, like, you know, because of our need to survive, there is a real built-in sort of infrastructure of productivity and of accomplishment and of like getting it done, and really almost like being rewarded for sacrifice and work from a very young age. And I think, you know, white people out here call it grit, and it is like, it has a benefit and it's very good and it's a big part of it. But I do think, like, having those moments of just owning your own power, acknowledging your own ability, like really appreciating yourself for doing something, or even if you haven't done something, or when something's hard, just kind of almost telling yourself, like, that was really hard what you did. Like, I used to have in my journal this thing that said, like, hey, you did that. And anytime I did something like that was cool, whether it was like organized my sock drawer or sold a TV show, I would like write it down, because, you know, I mean, like, my
Sold
family.
a TV show.
Yeah, kind of really slid in there.
No, but like,
Awesome.
but I think it's a little bit of like wanting to, and I'll go back and look at it and be like, oh my God, I did do that. Like, I did figure out what a mortgage was, because no one in my family really knew how to do that properly. Like, there's certain things that, you know, you figure out. And I would say, just like for the youth, and I always try to say this, is I feel like there was a lot of narratives in our life of indigeneity being something you had to transcend in order to be successful.
Yep.
And I've just never found that to be true. That I'm an Indian market baby. My mom is a Native artist. I don't have a problem negotiating. I don't have a problem like demanding prices and like getting that money. And because of my indigeneity, I'm a really good TV writer, and I'm really good at this business. And I was able to have like boss energy throughout my life. And so really, it wasn't until like I actually embraced those experiences and really dove deep into those histories that like I found success outside of, you know, in the Indian art world and that sort of thing. Like, my ability to like advocate and talk and tell stories, all of that came from my family, all of that came from my nation. And so it's really like not trying to parse or code switch so much as like really just sort of embracing all of those experiences at the same time. And it's hard to do for some, and for some it's not hard at all. But I think it's like really just kind of going on that journey with all of these pieces of you versus trying to figure out how they're supposed to like work separately from each other.
Yeah.
I love that. I like for me when I honestly, like, when I was a little girl, I'm like probably all of you, I was such a nerd. Like, I loved reading books. Like, my family would tell everybody my nose is, I was literally the nose in the book girl. Like, I remember we'd drive to Gallup to get groceries. Gallup was like the shopping place about an hour from Ganado to Gallup. And I remember I'd take my book and like the sun would go down and I would use every inch of the sunset to like get to the next page. I loved it. And it was because I've always been a natural dreamer and storyteller in my head. Like, I would, in summertime, I would start writing my own stories, because I would just like wake up with a dream and then just start writing it down. I wish I took care of I don't know where those stories are. I mean, maybe they're still in my head, but I love that about myself. And I hope and I want our young people to have that dream. That's why I love this title, The Power of Dreaming, because I feel like it opens up possibilities to worlds that is actually can happen too in many ways. I mean, that's why I love Sierra's work. She's opened possibilities for us and what is to happen. And Twyla's doing this same thing. You're opening up possibilities with programs at your institution. And like, I love that. And so I want our young people to see possibility, to dream it, and to enact on it and engage in it and not stifle the power of dreaming because it's real. And I feel like I've been a part of that. I've dreamt, I've been a dreamer. I'm still a dreaming. I'll be going Greg, old grandma, to be continue to dream. Because I feel like that's just the power. There's just so much power and possibilities.
I love how we have a space for every stage of life within our cultures too. From birth all the way to elderhood. And I think just talking about books and stuff, I'm sitting here in front of a bookshelf right there, you know, it's just like, those are all mine. Those are not for the schools. Those are all mine. But it's like, that's, I mean, we're storytellers and we use different forms of media as it comes along. And that's just the you know, an aspect of our ability to adapt to storytelling in different ways. We're on here on a Zoom and we're telling stories. We're doing what we've been doing for generations, you know, and hopefully somebody can take something that we say here and can latch onto it and it'll apply to their life and they'll be able to use it in a good way. And that's, I think that's, gosh, I wrote that like years ago about how I hope that what my impact would be is that she was good to all of us, you know. So once I'm gone, and even if that's just the tiniest bit of medicine I'm able to leave here, that's kind of part of our purpose, is just help things to be a little bit better for whoever comes behind you. And I know that I benefited from that, from my own elders, you know, coming up. There were people that I just absolutely, oh my gosh, I would, you know, fangirl over, and they don't necessarily have to be older than me. I am a huge proponent of not being afraid of our youth, not being afraid of their willingness and their understanding and their worldview and their desire to lead, and really trying to empower them to do that, because they're the ones that are going to have to do this once we're no longer around, you know. So I hope I can be the elder that I needed when we were coming up. And honestly, I feel like in terms of like what's been preparing me for that is and things that I want our young people to know is that we have to be not just always sitting in the tragedy of, you know, and the hardship of what's going on with us, but we also need to be proud of what we have overcome to get to this point now, and try not to look back at our past selves and judge ourselves with the eyes that we have now, with the eyes of the present, because it's we did what we had to do to survive when we were younger. Yeah. And honestly, if you think about the, you know, the march of time and everything that happened to Native people as time passes, you know, I'm one generation removed from boarding school parents. Mm-hmm. And to be able to get to this point where I am now in one generation, healing is possible, progress is possible. Work, you know, there's lots and lots of work left to do. I'm not saying that, you know, my position or what I am in this community is the be all end all, or, you know, or anything of that nature, but I have taken their value system and I've managed it. I've conquered that. All right, now you have to recognize me and acknowledge me as your equal, because I have all these letters behind my name because you value that. But I also get to maintain and hang on to my indigeneity. Yeah. It was, and I was both of those things the entire time that I was trying to make this, you know, make this journey. And one I value far more than the other. You can probably guess which one, you know. So it's we contain multitudes. We are capable of so much, and we have brilliant people, and our lifeways, our knowledge systems have existed since the dawn of time, since before the dawn of time, since the creation stories. And there's so much knowledge there. And I hope that young people are able to tap into it and recognize and pull power from that and, you know, employ it now. I can't wait to see what they do. I love seeing what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
And that's
you.
such a good point of like,
Oh,
we're actually so far ahead, like we don't realize it. Like I've been researching all these like new baby beds because like the whale, like when I had my kid 6 months ago or 6 years ago, it's like totally different. There's a thing called a snoo. It's like crazy expensive. And everyone's like, you got to get a snoo, you got to get a snoo. And I was like, what is this thing? So I was looking and as a video, and it's basically, it's like a bassinet, but it has like a swaddle that you clip the baby into, so they're stuck in it and they can't move, and then it moves for you, and it's got a thing, and I'm like, so it's a cradle board.
Yeah.
And I was like, I already have a cradle board, I don't need like any. And they're like, what? And I was like, what's a cradle board? And I was like showing them, I'm like, yeah, it does all the stuff this snoo does. This is like $2,000. And I was like, I don't know, it's crazy. But I was like, oh, like this white doctor like figured this thing out that we figured out like 1,000 years ago. And so I do think that sometimes there's an element of that, of just like really trusting that and trusting those roots and trusting that history and like that culture, because I think you're watching it exponentially, not divide, but it's like, if you, there's a lot of non-native people who are not getting this tutelage and are chasing the stuff we were teaching 100 years ago. And there's us now today with all of these like opportunities and all of these like the freaking internet. Like I feel like the internet killed the sort of like reservation native versus not like city native. Like my nieces and nephews are just all watching the same YouTube clips, so it doesn't really matter. And like there's something about that makes me really happy of like how much Indigenous people have embraced technology, and like a lot of the hangups I feel like are going away, and now there's just this sort of like feasting on our own like industriousness that's like really, really exciting, if that makes sense.
I love that. I in my new book, I write about this moment when I was struggling with the subtitle of the book. So the subtitle of my new book is An Indigenous Vision for Seeking Wholeness Every Day. And when I thought of it at first, I wanted it to be an Indigenous framework for seeking wholeness every day. And I didn't realize it, but in my mind, I was thinking a framework is more rigid and it will get me into the doors where the white men are. Like I was picturing like, well, I can get into like a conference room if I call it a framework. But if I call it a vision, people are going to think it's woo-woo and they're not going to read it. And I didn't realize I was like assessing it through this colonial lens to try to figure out like, what do I do? But it's like, what I am doing is living into an Indigenous vision. Like it is a vision. It's not this rigid framework. It's a cyclical vision. Like, and being honest with myself about like, that's what we're living into the world, is not our rigid frameworks, but these cyclical visions and these stories and the dreaming of what we want for future generations, of what we want healing to look like and feel like, you know. And I think all of you have captured that and continue to capture it in the work that you do. I'm just so grateful for you. I could keep talking for 2 more hours. I mean, I have.
I feel like this needs to be some sort of like a therapy group or something. Or
It always is when I meet
group.
But our portion of the evening is coming to a close. We are out of time. But I'm just so grateful to all 3 of you, Chi-miigwech, for just being in this space. I just can't tell you how much it meant to me to know, just looking forward to this, like all of October, knowing that this is going to be here, and I will hold on to this in November as I go, and we're in front of white audiences and we're trying to say the things we can remember. Oh yeah, there's that really wonderful space I had on November 1st. So thank you to everyone who's been here, and I'm going to pass it on to Cheyenne, and she's going to close us out for the evening. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to introduce myself in my language. So, Shihantamo, Johojivke, Cheyenne Kotom, Yaketiche, Johojivke, Ikotom, Anyasase, Kuwatotom, Samonokatomlet. Hi, everybody. My English name is Cheyenne. My given name is Iset. I am a citizen of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and I join you all today from the Seminole Hollywood Reservation in Southern Florida. I lead communications for the Center for Native American Youth, and more than anything, I just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us this evening. I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank our moderator. I want to thank Aspen Religion and Society for collaborating on this beautiful evening. I can't think of a better way to have kicked off Native American Heritage Month. We've discussed dreams, we've discussed boundaries, we've talked about narrative change, we've talked about it all really. And I truly believe that this space was really good medicine. And, we've really touched on how exhausting Native American Heritage Month can be for Native and Indigenous people. It's a time of high demand of our emotional and intellectual labor. And it could be very difficult having to find a balance in wanting to advocate for your people, wanting to educate the masses, tear down stereotypes, all of these things, but you're having to do it at the grip of sacrificing sometimes your mental health, sometimes your energy, your time, and thinking about taking care of our families and maybe even taking time away from ourselves and our families. And so this space was really done in such an intentional and meaningful way. And so I want to thank Dr. Twyla Baker. I want to thank Caitlin Curtis. I want to thank Dr. Amanda Tashini. I want to thank Sarah Ornelas for honestly their contributions to our people. And as a young Native woman, I literally fangirl all of you. And I've been not only probably following you all on social for a very long time, but I think when I envision what it is for our people and the power of dreaming in a path. And it's a path sometimes that hasn't been walked very much, but when I look at you all, I envision this path and it's a lot more clear. There's not as much brushery, there's not as much that I as a young person and other young people, I think have to figure out upon that path because of the work and the contributions that you all have dedicated to our communities and our people. And so I just want to thank you all for that. And the takeaways that I have that I've really carried while listening to all of you tonight, the power of dreaming, the power of possibilities, and seeing those opportunities, acting on those opportunities. I take that deeply, and I think about the power of intergenerational exchange and knowledge. And especially at the Center for Native American Youth, we are very much so focused on empowering our young Native people and providing them the support to make change, create initiatives, and build themselves up to be the future leaders of our people. And so I thank you all for joining us tonight. And I think the last thing that I'd like to say is our people, our ways, our knowledge systems outdate the United States. They outdate probably most things that we have been conditioned to know and believe. And our people were doctors, our people were botanists, our people were astronomers, they were beautiful and intelligent. And I hope that you get to explore that and be curious about what those things might have looked like. And so, Shanavachar Anyasase, thank you, relatives and friends, for tonight. Yes, happy Native American Heritage Month.